a WikiVidi documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Shetland. Shetland, also called the Shetland Islands and formerly Zetland, is a subarctic archipelago of Scotland that lies northeast of Great Britain. The islands lie some 80 kilometres to the northeast of Orkney, 168 kilometres from the British mainland and 280 kilometres southeast of the Faroe Islands. They form part of the division between the Atlantic Ocean to the west and the North Sea to the east. The total area is 1,466 square kilometres, and the population totaled 23,210 in 2011. Comprising the Shetland constituency of the Scottish Parliament, Shetland Islands Council is one of the 32 council areas of Scotland, the island's administrative centre, and only borough is Lerwick, which has also been the capital of Shetland since taking over from Scalloway in 1708. The largest island, known as the Mainland, has an area of 967 square kilometres, making it the third largest Scottish island and the fifth largest of the British Isles. There are an additional 15 inhabited islands. The archipelago has an oceanic climate, a complex geology, a rugged coastline, and many low, rolling hills. Humans have lived in Shetland since the Mesolithic period. The earliest written references to the islands date to Roman times. The early historic period was dominated by Scandinavian influences, especially from Norway, and the islands did not become part of Scotland until the 15th century. When Scotland became part of the Kingdom of Great Britain in 1707, trade with Northern Europe decreased. Fishing has continued to be an important aspect of the economy up to the present day. The discovery of North Sea oil in the 1970s significantly boosted Shetland's economy, employment and public sector revenues. The local way of life reflects the Scottish and Norse heritage of the Isles, including the Uphellier Fire Festival, and a strong musical tradition, especially the traditional fiddle style. The islands have produced a variety of writers of prose and poetry, often in the distinct Shetland dialect of Scots. There are numerous areas set aside to protect the local fauna and flora, including a number of important seabird nesting sites. The Shetland pony and Shetland sheepdog are two well-known Shetland animal breeds. Other local breeds include the Shetland sheep, cow, goose, and duck. The Shetland pig, or grise, has been extinct since about 1930. The island's motto, which appears on the council's coat of arms, is This Old Norse phrase is taken from the Danish 1241 Basic Law, Code of Jutland, and is also mentioned in Jarl's Saga, and means, by law shall land be built. Etymology. The name of Shetland is derived from the Old Norse words, and. In AD 43 and 77 the Roman authors Pomponius Mela and Pliny the Elder referred to the 7 islands they respectively called and, both of which are assumed to be Shetland. Another possible early written reference to the islands is Tacitus' report in Agricola in AD 98, after describing the discovery and conquest of Orkney, that the Roman fleet had seen, Tula, too. In early Irish literature, Shetland is referred to as the Isles of Cats, which may have been the pre-Norse inhabitants' name for the islands. The Cat tribe also occupied parts of the northern Scottish mainland, and their name can be found in Caithness, and in the Gaelic name for Sutherland. The oldest version of the modern name Shetland is the Latinized adjectival form of the Old Norse name recorded in a letter from Harold, Count of Shetland in 1190, becoming Hetland in 1431 after various intermediate transformations. It is possible that the Pictish cat sound forms part of this Norse name. It then became in the 16th century, as Norn was gradually replaced by Scots in the form of the Shetland dialect, became. The initial letter is the Middle Scots letter, yog, the pronunciation of which is almost identical to the original Norn sound. When the use of the letter yog was discontinued, it was often replaced by the similar-looking letter z, hence the form used in the name of the pre-1975 county council. This is also the source of the Z postcode used for Shetland. Most of the individual islands have Norse names, although the derivations of some are obscure. and may represent pre-Norse, possibly Pictish or even pre-Celtic names or elements. Geography and geology. Shetland is around 170 kilometres north of mainland Scotland, covers an area of 1,468 square kilometres and has a coastline 2,702 kilometres long. Lerwick, the capital and largest settlement, has a population of 6,958, and about half of the archipelago's total population of 23,167 people live within 16 kilometres of the town. Scalloway on the west coast, which was the capital until 1708, has a population of less than 1,000. Only 16 of about 100 islands are inhabited. The main island of the group is known as Mainland. The next largest are Yell, Unst, and Fetlar, which lie to the north, and Bressie and Walsay, which lie to the east, and west. Burgh, Muckleroe, Papastur, Trondra and Valer are smaller islands to the west of Mainland. The other inhabited islands are Fula 28 kilometres west of Walls, Faroe Isles 38 kilometres southwest of Sombra Head, and the Outskerries to the east. The uninhabited islands include Musa, known for the Broch of Musa, the finest preserved example in Scotland of an Iron Age broch, Nos to the east of Bressie, which has been a national nature reserve since 1955. St Ninian's Isle, connected to mainland by the largest active tomblow in the UK, and Outstack, the northernmost point of the British Isles. Shetland's location means that it provides a number of such records. Moonis is the most northerly castle in the United Kingdom and Skor the most northerly settlement. The geology of Shetland is complex, with numerous faults and foldexes. These islands are the northern outpost of the Caledonian orogeny, and there are outcrops of Lewisian, Dalradian, and Moan metamorphic rocks with histories similar to their equivalents on the Scottish mainland. There are also old red sandstone deposits and granite intrusions. The most distinctive features are the ultra-basic ophiolite, peridotite and gabbro on Unst and Fetlar, which are remnants of the Iapetus ocean floor. Much of Shetland's economy depends on the oil-bearing sediments in the surrounding seas. Geological evidence shows that in around 6100 BC a tsunami caused by the Storger slides hit Shetland, as well as the rest of the east coast of Scotland, and may have created a wave of up to 25 metres high in the Vosges where modern populations are highest. The highest point of Shetland is Ronas Hill at 450 metres. The Pleistocene glaciations entirely covered the islands. During that period, the Stains of Stoffast, a 2,000-ton glacial erratic, came to rest on a prominent hilltop in Lunasting. Shetland is a national scenic area which, unusually, includes a number of discrete locations: Fair Isle, Fula, Southwest Mainland, Muckleroe, Eshenes, Featherland, and Hermanus. The total area covered by the designation is 41,833 hectares, of which 26,347 hectares is marine. In October 2018, legislation came into force in Scotland to prevent public bodies, without good reason, showing Shetland in a separate box in maps, as had often been the practice. The legislation requires the islands to be displayed in a manner that accurately and proportionately represents their geographical location in relation to the rest of Scotland, so as make clear the island's real distance from other areas. Climate. Shetland has an oceanic temperate maritime climate, bordering on, but very slightly above average in summer temperatures, the subpolar variety, with long, but cool winters and short mild summers. The climate all year round is moderate due to the influence of the surrounding seas, with average nighttime low temperatures a little above 1 degree Celsius in January and February, and average daytime high temperatures of near 14°C in July and August. Temperatures over 25 degrees Celsius are very rare. The highest temperature on record was 28.4 degrees Celsius in July 1991 and the lowest 8.9 degrees Celsius in the Januaries of 1952 and 1959. The frost-free period may be as little as 3 months. In contrast, inland areas of nearby Scandinavia on similar latitudes experience significantly larger temperature differences between summer and winter, with the average highs of regular July days comparable to Lerwick's all-time record heat that is around 23 C, further demonstrating the moderating effect of the Atlantic Ocean. In contrast, winters are considerably milder than those expected in nearby continental areas, even comparable to winter temperatures of many parts of England and Wales much further south. The general character of the climate is windy and cloudy, with at least 2 mm of rain falling on more than 250 days a year. Average yearly precipitation is 1,003 mm, with November and December the wettest months. Snowfall is usually confined to the period November to February, and snow seldom lies on the ground for more than a day. Less rain falls from April to August, although no month receives less than 50 mm. Fog is common during summer due to the cooling effect of the sea on mild southerly airflows. Due to the island's latitude, on clear winter nights the northern lights can sometimes be seen in the sky, while in summer there is almost perpetual daylight, a state of affairs known locally as the simmerdim. Annual bright sunshine averages 1,110 hours, and overcast days are common. Prehistory. Due to the practice, dating to at least the early Neolithic, of building in stone on virtually treeless islands, Shetland is extremely rich in physical remains of the prehistoric eras, and there are over 5,000 archaeological sites all told. A midden site at Westvo on the south coast of Mainland, dated to 4320-4030 BC, has provided the first evidence of Mesolithic human activity on Shetland. The same site provides dates for early Neolithic activity and finds its gourd of Brewster in walls have been dated to 3400 BC. Shetland knives are stone tools that date from this period, made from felside from North Mavine. Pottery shards found at the important site of Jarlshof also indicate that there was Neolithic activity there, although the main settlement dates from the Bronze Age. This includes a smithy, a cluster of wheelhouses, and a later broch. The site has provided evidence of habitation during various phases right up until Viking times. Heel-shaped cairns are a style of chambered cairn unique to Shetland, with a particularly large example on Vmentry. Numerous brochs were erected during the Iron Age. In addition to Musa, there are significant ruins at Clickham, Culswick, Old Scatness, and West Burghfirth, although their origin and purpose is a matter of some controversy. The later Iron Age inhabitants of the Northern Isles were probably Pictish, although the historical record is sparse. Hunter states in relation to King Bridi I of the Picts in the 6th century AD, as for Shetland, Orkney, Skye and the Western Isles, their inhabitants, most of whom appear to have been Pictish in culture and speech at this time, are likely to have regarded Bridi as a fairly distant presence. In 2011, the collective site, the Crucible of Iron Age Shetland, including Broch of Musa, Old Scatness, and Jarlshof, joined the UK's tentative list of World Heritage Sites. Scandinavian colonisation. The expanding population of Scandinavia led to a shortage of available resources and arable land there, and led to a period of Viking expansion, the Norse gradually shifting their attention from plundering to invasion. Shetland was colonised during the late 8th and 9th centuries, the fate of the existing indigenous population being uncertain. Modern Shetlanders have almost identical proportions of Scandinavian matrilineal and patrilineal genetic ancestry, suggesting that the islands were settled by both men and women in equal measure. Vikings then used the islands as a base for pirate expeditions to Norway and the coasts of mainland Scotland. In response, Norwegian King Harald Harfagra annexed the Northern Isles in 875. Ragnvald Eysteinn received Orkney and Shetland from Harald as an earldom as reparation for the death of his son in battle in Scotland, and then passed the earldom on to his brother Sigurd the Mighty. The islands converted to Christianity in the late 10th century. King Olav Tryggvason summoned the Jarl Sigurd the Stout during a visit to Orkney and said, "I order you and all your subjects to be baptized. If you refuse, I'll have you killed on the spot, and I swear I will ravage every island with fire and steel." Unsurprisingly, Sigurd agreed, and the islands became Christian at a stroke. Unusually, from c. 1100 onwards the Norse Jarls owed allegiance both to Norway and to the Scottish crown through their holdings as Earls of Caithness. In 1194, when Harold Maddadsson was Earl of Orkney and Shetland, a rebellion broke out against King Sverre Sigurdsson of Norway. They sailed for Norway, but were beaten in the Battle of Florvåg near Bergen. After his victory, King Sverre placed Shetland under direct Norwegian rule, a state of affairs that continued for nearly 2 centuries. Increased Scottish interest. From the mid-13th century onwards, Scottish monarchs increasingly sought to take control of the islands surrounding the mainland. The process was begun in earnest by Alexander II, and was continued by his successor Alexander III. This strategy eventually led to an invasion of Scotland by Håkon Håkonsson, King of Norway. His fleet assembled in Bressay Sound before sailing for Scotland. After the stalemate of the Battle of Largs, Håkon retreated to Orkney, where he died in December 1263, entertained on his deathbed by recitations of the sagas. His death halted any further Norwegian expansion in Scotland, and following this ill-fated expedition, the Hebrides and Man were yielded to the Kingdom of Scotland as a result of the 1266 Treaty of Perth, although the Scots recognised continuing Norwegian sovereignty over Orkney and Shetland. Annexation by Scotland. In the 14th century, Orkney and Shetland remained a Norwegian possession, but Scottish influence was growing. John Haldsson, who was murdered in Thurso in 1231, was the last of an unbroken line of Norse Jarls, and thereafter the Earls were Scots noblemen of the houses of Angus and St. Clair. On the death of Håkon VI in 1380, Norway formed a political union with Denmark, after which the interest of the royal house in the islands declined. In 1469, Shetland was pledged by Christian I, in his capacity as King of Norway, as security against the payment of the dowry of his daughter Margaret, betrothed to James III of Scotland. As the money was never paid, the connection with the Crown of Scotland became permanent. In 1470, William Sinclair, 1st Earl of Caithness, ceded his title to James III, and the following year the Northern Isles were directly annexed to the Crown of Scotland, an action confirmed by the Parliament of Scotland in 1472. Nonetheless, Shetland's connection with Norway has proved to be enduring. From the early 15th century on, the Shetlanders sold their goods through the Hanseatic League of German merchantmen. The Hanse would buy shiploads of salted fish, wool and butter, and import salt, cloth, beer, and other goods. The late 16th century and early 17th century were dominated by the influence of the despotic Robert Stewart, Earl of Orkney, who was granted the islands by his half-sister Mary, Queen of Scots, and his son Patrick. The latter commenced the building of Scalloway Castle, but after his imprisonment in 1609 the Crown annexed Orkney and Shetland again until 1643, when Charles I granted them to William Douglas, 7th Earl of Morton. These rights were held on and off by the Mortons until 1766, when they were sold by James Douglas, 14th Earl of Morton, to Lawrence Dundas. 18th and 19th centuries. The trade with the North German towns lasted until the 1707 Act of Union, when high salt duties prevented the German merchants from trading with Shetland. Shetland then went into an economic depression, as the local traders were not as skilled in trading salted fish. However, some local merchant lairds took up where the German merchants had left off, and fitted out their own ships to export fish from Shetland to the continent. For the independent farmers of Shetland this had negative consequences, as they now had to fish for these merchant lairds. Smallpox afflicted the islands in the 17th and 18th centuries, but as vaccines became available after 1800, health improved. The island was very badly hit by the potato famine of 1846, and the government introduced a relief plan for the island under the command of Captain Robert Craigie of the Royal Navy, who stayed in Lerwick to oversee the project 1847-1852. During this period Craigie also did much to improve and increase roads on the island. Population increased to a maximum of 31,670 in 1861. However, British rule came at price for many ordinary people as well as traders. The Shetlanders' nautical skills were sought by the Royal Navy. Some 3,000 served during the Napoleonic Wars from 1800 to 1815 and press gangs were rife. During this period 120 men were taken from Fetlar alone, and only 20 of them returned home. By the late 19th century 90% of all Shetland was owned by just 32 people, and between 1861 and 1881 more than 8,000 Shetlanders emigrated. With the passing of the Crofters Act in 1886, the Liberal Prime Minister William Gladstone emancipated crofters from the rule of the landlords. The Act enabled those who had effectively been landowners' serfs to become owner-occupiers of their own small farms. By this time fishermen from Holland, who had traditionally gathered each year off the coast of Shetland to fish for herring, triggered an industry in the islands that boomed from around 1880 until the 1920s, when stocks of the fish began to dwindle. The production peaked in 1905 at more than 1 million barrels, of which 708,000 were exported. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?